There are things that we cannot see, things that fly through our skies at night. With our limited human vision, these things over the years have given us the shivers. We know these creatures are there and love them as part of nature, but their folklore is creepy and strange and often dark and mysterious. Welcome, dear friends, to another episode, and this time we will be looking at some very beautiful creatures whose realm is the night, flying through our skies under the moonlight. Our human eyesight is very limited by darkness. Animals and birds have better time of it, and some animals and birds reign over this time of the day. Because of this, our limitations of sight, we have developed a fear or wariness of those things that revel in the darkness. We consider them uncanny, supernatural, and possibly even full of dark magic. But equally as creatures who are comfortable in the darkness and at a liminal time of the day, the dusk and the dawn, we also came to regard them as magical, wise, looking both forwards and back at the daylight and forwards to the darkness, able to travel in both realms with ease. And as liminal beings such as these, they are also thought to be able to travel between worlds, between our world and the other world. They are messengers and oracles. Once upon a while ago, Mark took me to a place on Dartmoor that has a birder he knew very well. And he knew he would be able to surprise me with something. We had been for a walk at one of the nature reserves, and as we came out of the woodlands and up over the little pathways through the heath, a sound came from around us, something strange that I had never heard in my life. It was starting to become dusk. It was the song of nightjars. Where he took me to was a place where they were roosting and nesting, migrants here only for a short time. It was magical, the light in that last golden glow of dusk before the oncoming night, and the sound was entrancing. Nightjars are mystical birds. Once again, they are liminal, neither dark nor light to folklore. Well, probably more dark than light, really. And they are a weird-looking thing. Tiny little beaks, but cavernous mouths, very well camouflaged, clever beady eyes, short legs, and elegant long wings, beautifully strange. They are insect eaters, especially moths, and found all over our beautiful blue-green planet, except for Antarctica and the Seychelles. Of course, with their plumage effective for hiding this aspect of their nature, and they are very shy birds, they became thought of as secretive. They were hiding secrets, otherworldly secrets. They are considered not of the darkness nor of the day, not of the air and nor of the land, perfect liminal beings, and as such full of magical folklore. In what we call the New World, the nightjar is sometimes known as the nighthawk, an interesting term adopted by metal detectorists to denote those unscrupulous people who raid protected sites overnight to detect and steal artifacts. Of course, they are the scourge of detecting communities and very much frowned upon. Nighthawks. It sums up these thieves perfectly, named for a bird that hunts at night, is secretive and elusively moving through the darkness. In Celtic Wales, the nightjar is Trowch-la-Moa, in English the big spinner, from its strange whirring call, evocative of the spinning wheel sounds of home wheels most cottagers would have had in history. Its taxonomic name, though, is Caprimulgus, capra Latin for nanny goat, cabra in Spanish, and mulgare to milk. It is a strange Latin name, the goat milker, the Goatsucker. And this name came about as it was believed that nightjars would suck milk from the teats of she-goats. They are indeed the real live Chupacabra. As it is the name, Nightjar comes from the night, of course, and the onomatopoeic jar, jar, jar call the bird creates. In countryside places, it was also known as the fern owl, the churn owl, the eve jar, all names inspired by a peculiar song. Another and darker still name for this pretty bird is the corpse fowl. These birds are believed to take and sheathe the souls of unbaptized children who pass away, leaving them as ghosts for eternity. Of course, in history, we were not so lucky to have medical knowledge that we have now, nor of the cleanliness in some eras, and so child mortality was hideously large in numbers. This lent much folklore to the deaths of these youngsters, especially those who had not even lived long enough to be baptized, and so safely kept within heaven. A cruel belief for such a little innocent, a belief that I consider utter nonsense, but then as a hedge witch for decades I cannot conceive of the cruelty of some religious beliefs. The poor little nightjar was also believed to kill calves, the young cows and bullocks passing away due to puckeridge disease. Researching this disease led me down a path of discovery. Puckeridge was another localised name for the nightjar, hence the puckeridge disease. However, it was realised that this disease, thought spread to calves by nightjars due to their nesting in cattle fields where insects are plenty, as it flew at and pecked the newly born cattle, was actually spread by a flesh-eating fly maggot, much more gruesome than the nightjar. In approximately 350 BC, Aristotle wrote of the nightjar, the goatsucker, flies against the goats and sucks them, whence its name. They say that when the udder has been sucked, that it gives no more milk, and that the goat becomes blind. The bird is not so quick-sighted by day, but sees well at night. The nightjar's association with death is far and wide. The mythology of the Viking people tells us of Odin and his night raven, travelling with the wild hunt, the ghosts of warriors killed in battle who would travel the sharp winter night skies. Now we already know that Hugin and Munin are Odin's ravens, so who or what is the night raven? Modern scholars have suggested this was the nightjar. The Norwegian name for this strange bird is natraven, night raven. Could this be the night bird of death, accompanying Odin and his ghostly warriors? In the New World, the nightjar is the onomatopoeic whippoorwill. It even says its own name. And also the nighthawk, as we have mentioned before. And these have a very focused folklore, and although some would have come from the native people of the Americas, it has been added to by the flood of immigrants that took the land and settled there, bringing their folklore and stories. In Spanish, it is cuerpo ruin, separated into words as cuerpo meaning body and ruin, ruined body, corpse, and also it sounds like its call. The French call it bois pourri, wood rotten, rotten wood. Again, that connection to death in the sound of the song. The poor nightjar just can't win. And so the whippoorwill, once again associated with being omens of death or soul stealers, yet localised folklore brought from more than just England, Spain and France was brought to the Americas. And this was added to the rich vibrancy of Native American folklore, and so to some peculiar folklore from the New World. Young ladies who were still single dreaded hearing the bird in springtime, its own courtship time. If it called only once, she would not find a husband for another year. Yet, if the song was continuous, she would always be a single woman, doomed to be a spinster. Heaven forfend. However, a way to dispel this evil omen was to make a wish after the first call quickly. She must keep that wish a secret close to her heart and never let anyone know. If she managed to do this, she would find herself a husband. If a fellow was suffering from a bad back, He must turn somersaults in time to the whippoorwill call, and it would vanish. I have doubts about this one, as someone who suffers from arthritis. The Omaha tribe have a folklore belief that if one heard the call of a whippoorwill, it was an invitation they must try and decline. If the bird then stopped singing, that foretold the listener would pass away. Should the nightjar keep calling, they would instead have a long life. The Ute tribe from Colorado told that this bird was one of the gods of the nighttime and could magically change frogs into the moon. And finally, the Iroquois knew that moccasin flowers were the little shoes that the whippoorwill birds wore. This reminds me very much of the European foxglove folklore of how they are the pretty shoes of fairies. As we listen in the night, we hear beautiful and eerie sounds coming to us through the moonlight. Owls. Their call has become a background noise in so many horror films, and depending on the owl species, it does have a haunting sound. Here in the mountains we have eagle owls with a deep boom and the peep peep song of the Scops owl. In England there is the sound of the tawny owl, my favourite owl call. It is so evocative of cold winter nights and the branches of trees silhouetted by moonlight. And my favourite owl, the barn owl. Beautiful silent ghosts of the landscape, thrilling with beautiful heart-shaped faces. As with all of our other night creatures, these too are liminal, travellers through day and night, through our world and the other world, and as such have always been considered uncanny also. Far, far back into history, they have been thought of as wise, wicked, and even foolish. And of course they are associated with witches and Sabbath times of the year, when the seasons are dark, especially Samhain and Halloween. The owl, as a symbol of wisdom and prophecy, knowledge or messages brought to help us, stretches probably the longest back in time, and continues to this day. In India we find that owls have the same symbolism around them, also for some communities a connection to the goddess Lakshmi, she who blesses us with wealth. But for some there is also the flip side of superstition. These birds bring bad luck, especially if you hear their call at night. In old folklore medicine in India, a broth made from owl eyes would be used to treat childhood seizures. Eating the eyes would give magical properties to the consumer, who would now be able to see in the darkness. Owl meat was used to treat rheumatism, and also as an aphrodisiac. In the south of India, the prophecy of owls depended on how many times the owl hooted. 1 meant a coming sudden death, 2 signified success in any ventures started soon, 3 hoots and a female family member would be married soon, 4 heralded disturbances in the family, 5 and travel would soon be underway, 6 and you should expect visitors to arrive soon, 7 foretold of mental health problems, 8 warned of sudden death, and 9 hoots told of good fortune and good luck that would be on its way. This is really similar to magpie folklore with the rhyme of 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, and so on. And finally, to call someone a baby owl in India is a great insult. I believe that you are saying the person is a child of someone quite stupid. Lilith, the Mesopotamian goddess who became a figure in Jewish mythology as a goddess or a demon, is associated with the owl. She is the goddess of death with taloned feet and horned headdress and surrounded by her owls. In ancient Greece, the owl was the familiar of Athena, goddess of wisdom. She had a crow, but it was too mischievous all the time, so she found the owl with its beautiful eyes, mimicking her own beautiful grey eyes, and its contemplative appearance to be perfect as a pet and to represent her. This was the little owl that was her bird, the belief that they had a light within that guided their way in the night time. Athena, as a war goddess also, was the patroness of warriors and armies, and owl symbology abounded as troops went into battle. One flying over as they marched told soldiers they would be victorious. Athens, named for Athena, and also the Acropolis, was full of little owls allowed to fly freely. Little owls were a part of trade folklore also. On the reverse side of the coins, a little owl was pictured. The ancient empire of Rome, as it absorbed so many Greek people and so much Greek folklore, mythology and art, also adopted the owl lore. And so Athena became Minerva and took her owls with her, along with her great wisdom and prophecy. In the mythology of Proserpina and Pluto, or Persephone and Hades in Greek myth, and there are a few versions of the same tales, the young woman is kidnapped by the god of the underworld. Her mother Ceres, or Greek Demeter, searches for her daughter to rescue her and bring her home. Demeter, Ceres, is a goddess herself of agriculture and farming. Jupiter, furious, sends orders for Pluto to release Proserpina. Pluto agreed she would be allowed back to the world with her mother on the understanding that while in the underworld she ate nothing. She was witnessed taking pomegranate and eating the little red seas by Ascalaphus, son of Acheron, who told all. Now she must stay half the year in the underworld and half the year with her mother. When she is with Ceres it is spring and summer. When she returns to Pluto, her mother mourns and winter follows. And what has this to do with owls? Well, it is Ascalaphus who is punished for his indiscretion by being turned into an owl by Ceres, Demeter. In Roman folk tradition, and so that is probably from Greek maybe also, we have some fascinating folklore traditions. Virgil, Pliny and Horace all wrote of owls that they were the familiars of witches and that they foretold death. Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, Commodius and Aurelius and Agrippa all had deaths foretold by the presence and the calling of owls. It was known in Roman folk medicine and spells that the ashes of an owl's feet, burned to powder, would cure snakebite venom. The heart of an owl, if lain on the breast of a woman who was asleep, would cause her to tell all her secrets as she dreamed. Dead owls would be nailed to the house door to ward off evil eye and all of the evil magic surrounding this. For the Roman people to dream of owls signified that travellers would suffer shipwreck and theft. Witches, Strix, would transform into owls and fly silently at night where a newborn was lying asleep and suck its blood. What is very interesting is how many of these superstitions carried forward so late into British folklore, and I will explain a little more of this in a moment. The native people of Japan, the Ainu, carved eagle owls and mounted the sculptures on the roofs of their houses to keep famine and disease away. For the Ainu, this huge owl with its deep voice was sent by the gods as a messenger, or may even be a visiting ancestor. Before any hunting could commence, they would toast the eagle owl. In Japan also, the screech owl brought warnings of impending danger. The barn and horned owls with their strange faces were supernatural beings, yokai, sometimes dark creatures, sometimes with blessings, but always to be wary of. It is Blakiston's fish owl that is most revered god of the Ainu in Hokkaido. It is known as the protective god of the villages here. In ancient China, the owl was a clan symbol, the thunderbolt masters, and they who control the seasons because of their bright ability to see through the darkest night, much as lightning flashes across the night sky. Ornamental owls, with their association to this thunder and lightning storms, were hidden in the corners of rooms and around the houses to warn off lightning strikes and fires. The owl too symbolises too much yang energy, too much masculinity, unruly energy and activity. In village traditions, to hear the night hooting of owls would be a prophecy that a grave must be dug because death would be following in the community soon. Isn't it interesting how much across so many cultures and countries owls signify impending death? Finally, in this fascinating country, one of the names for owls is Xiao, thought of as evil. In my Alphabet of Fairies, I talk about the Xiao in the letter X episode. They are mountain dwellers, sometimes with only one leg, sometimes denoting a monkey-like creature, but often a cat-like bird, and an owl, many of the species looking familiar to cats with their tufted ears and flat faces. Tales told of these supernatural birds were that they killed and consumed their own mothers. Middle Eastern folklore and mythology tells us that the owls are harbingers of destruction, and once again that link to death. In some of these countries they are believed to be the souls of the deceased who have had great wrong done to them and wander constantly looking for revenge. Soldiers on their way to battle, seeing or hearing owls, had their hearts sink. They knew much death would follow. There would be many casualties and many losses, and probably defeat. Again, that link to warfare and owls, as with ancient Greece and Rome. In traditional beliefs from this part of the world, we find that people who nag and moan about everything are called owls. Those who are depressed or who have bad news to impart are said to have the face of an owl. To be at someone's home and notice an owl there foretold of their death, and should you dream of one of these beautiful birds, you better hope you don't hear it in your dreams hooting, or this will foretell bad luck. A silent one, though, there is nothing to fear. In Poland, young women who pass away as yet unmarried transform into doves, and those souls who are married will transform into owls. Once again, we have the fear brought by owls calling warnings of impending doom in a household, or at the very least bad luck or illness. Also in Poland we find a lovely tradition that the owl keeps itself in the darkness because it is so beautiful it cannot bear to face the jealousy of the daytime birds with their constant comparisons. Russian folklore brings us the knowledge of hunters who would carry owl claws with them so that should they die, their souls would be able to claw their way to heaven. The Kalmyk people, the only remaining Mongolian tribes still residing in Europe, believe owls to be sacred creatures, as it was an owl that once saved the life of Genghis Khan. In folkloric France, owls were venerated also. Many owl species, the eared owls, are given the title duke. For example, the huge European eagle owl is named Hibou Grand Duc. It is thought by some this might have come from the tradition that only those of the title duke and above could wear plumes of feathers. The eared owls with their natural plumes, therefore, became dukes. Sadly, though, this chivalric respect did not last. Over time, the eagle owl became classified as vermin, and this despicable classification was only removed in the late 1960s. The Middle Ages, a time of intense superstition and fear, often very unfounded fears, brought a more malignant character to the owl. They became the familiars of witches. They were now thought of as fools, to be feared and wary of, dark spirits. The owl that could see in the dark of night was unnatural and so must have been up to no good, and that cry again calling out that death was close by. And so, as with much unwarranted fear and paranoid tale-telling, more witches, or as we know, the marginalised people, were persecuted, and with them the owls also. Christianity branded them evil and demonic, searchers for occult and supernatural knowledge, even though the Bible is an occult hidden knowledge book. In art of the time, owls are often painted with apes and monkeys, and these are considered the worst of nature's creatures for some reason, cohorts of the devil himself. It was these two creatures that hid close and in the tree of knowledge, so that they could hear secrets not meant for them and capture innocent birds that had come to gather knowledge as prophecy. Once more, they were the evil birds flying past homes where death would follow. Even Shakespeare, in a typical tradition of his day, writing in the play Macbeth, calls the owl the fatal bellman, as bells were always rung at the time of execution. My favourite owl, and one that I make sculpture dolls of a lot and also jewellery, and I have to say one of Mark's favourites for paintings, is the beautifully graceful and hauntingly strange barn owl. And she has a peculiar folklore all of her own, probably because of the utter silence of these birds as they fly and hunt over the country fields. The farmers and villagers would see these birds swooping or nesting in their barns, looking like ghosts. with strange heart faces, almost human in a way, and this close relationship with communities bred a folklore of its very own. Poets of the 17 and 1800s used the barn owl as symbols of birds of doom bringing or heralding death, no surprise there then, and communities did believe that if one called while flying past a house, the reaper would follow into the home not long after. With the lack of modern medicine and understanding of cleanliness and disease, it really is no wonder the intense fear of sudden death and disease was so prevalent. Barn owls were also weather predictors. In merry old England, a screeching owl foretold of freezing cold and storms to come, and yet if owls were heard during the storms, they would be gone soon and cleaner and better weather on the way. And so now to some strange, localised folk beliefs. Remember the custom of nailing a dead owl to the door from Rome? Well, this tradition carried on in Britain up to and well into the 1800s in country areas, to protect the house from lightning strikes. Should you see an owl perched in a tree and you decided to run round and around the tree, the owl would be compelled to follow you with its head turning round and round until it eventually broke its own neck. A remedy for alcoholism was to drink raw owl eggs, and children would also be given this so that they would not become drunkards in later life. Owl eggs burned to ash would be used in potions that, when applied, would improve failing eyesight. To help young children recover from the dreaded whooping cough, a broth would be made from an owl and fed to the child. This was a tradition from Yorkshire in the northeast of England. To hear an owl while a baby is being born foretells of an unhappy life for that baby as he or she grows, or they may even become a witch. Owls nesting in empty houses will tell us that there are ghosts residing in that building. In the Celtic country of Wales, at the side of England, we learn owls hooting close to the home that an unmarried young woman has just lost her virginity. Also in Wales, pregnant women hearing owls could rest easy knowing the owl was here to bring the baby blessings. From Wales too we have the Mabinogion and the country's book of legend, and in this book it is the tale of Blodeuwedd, goddess of flowers, the goddess who betrays. The magician Gwydion creates a most beautiful wife for the hero Prince Llywelyn from the most beautiful flowers. But just as the flowers have no right or wrong or good or bad, and certainly no loyalty, merely great beauty, she betrays her husband with another man, Gronwy. They make a plan to kill her husband, and as he dies, Prince Llywelyn transforms into an eagle, but Gwydion saw this and changed him back to a human form. He cared for the prince and healed him. Once he was fully healed, Llywelyn vowed revenge, but he did not kill faithless Blodeuwedd. Instead, he had his magician change her to a barn owl, and condemned to roam the land alone and in constant sorrow at her loneliness, only appearing at dusk and hiding at dawn, never to show her face in the bright light of day. In Shropshire, in the Midlands of England, barn owls are named Owlet, and this fabulous name is used as one of the entrancing and weaving dances of the British Morris dancers. Florence Nightingale, the heroine nurse of the Crimea, had a little pet owl. In 1850 she had been visiting the Acropolis in Athens and found a group of small boys stoning a baby little owl that had fallen from the nest. After rescuing this young bird, she took it back home to her home of Lea Hurst in Matlock in Derbyshire in England. The little bird she called Athena, of course, and it was her beloved pet until it passed away in 1854. She had her little beloved bird taxidermied and preserved before she left to serve as the nurse in Crimea, and the taxidermy bird can still be seen at the Florence Nightingale Museum next to St Thomas Hospital in London. I will finish this bunch of folklore about a modern myth, true or false, and given who recorded this tale, it was probably done with a knowing wink and a touch of mischief, the Owlman of Mawnan. In 1976 in Mawnan village in the lovely Celtic county of Cornwall, there was a sighting of a strange creature in the local churchyard. 2 young girls holidaying in the area saw it hovering near St Mawnan and St Stephen's Church Tower. It was a tale apparently recorded by the infamous Tony Doc Shields, a bit of a rogue in the world of cryptozoological research, but an entertainer at heart, I would say. He had been an instigator of many cryptozoological press stories of monsters from folklore and fantastical true sightings. With this story, the 2 children, June and Vicky Melling, were terrified by the sight of a large winged man, a feathered bird man. They had been so frightened, their father Don cut short the holiday and took the family straight back home. One of the young girls drew a picture of this strange and heart-stopping creature, a creature Doc Shields then named the Owlman. I love this tale. A cryptozoologist, writer and publisher we both admire very much, John Downes, wrote the seminal book on this case, The Owlman and Others. One of my favourite B-movies, which I think is on YouTube still, is the 1967 about an evil scientist who has wicked plans, The Vulture. This is set in Cornwall, and the main setting for the intrigue, a village church. With this and the Mothman episode at Point Pleasant in 1966 and 1967, could these have planted the seed in Doc Shields' imagination? Or was the Owlman real? I will leave it to you to research more and decide for yourselves, but it certainly deserves a mention as a modern piece of folklore. And so, dear friends, we come to another end of another episode, and this time all about strange creatures of the night. So for now, dear friends, until next time, take care of yourselves, brightest of blessings, and remember, don't play with the fairy folk in the dark, or you may end up in one of my folk tales yourself.